Alright, so we were graced recently with the presence of a new trailer for Star Trek Lower Decks, which I won't be playing here because copyright, so here's a picture of a tribble I drew instead. Seriously though, I've not been sure what to make of Lower Decks since its announcement, but to my delight I actually laughed at some of the jokes in this trailer. Still have some concerns though, which likely won't bother a majority of viewers. Nonetheless, let's take a look at this show's setting. The ship is the USS Cerritos NCC 75567 during the year 2380, which places it at only 1 year after the events of Star Trek Nemesis, 2 years after Voyager returned from the Alpha Quadrant, and 5 years after the Dominion War. In terms of upcoming events, according to the Picard prequel books, this is still a year before Starfleet was made aware of the Romulan supernova brewing over in the Beta Quadrant. Either way, this would have been set during a time where Captain Picard was still in charge of the Enterprise E, Janeway was an admiral, and generally things were looking up for Starfleet. So expect a reprieve from all that darker looking Trek of recent years. But, as we already knew, this will not follow the adventures of these heroic characters. Instead, we're looking at the Lower Decks crews. The lower decks of a Federation starship tend to be the ones that house much of the bowels of a vessel, and not even the cool parts like the warp core or main deflector control. We're talking landing strut maintenance, watching plasma relays and checking on the extra stores of deuterium. There are some other functions down there, for example weapons and sensor arrays on the keel of the ship, but for the most part even the corridors are less spacious. Voyager's The Good Shepherd and TNG's Lower Decks give good examples of these sorts of jobs, things that have to get done to make the ship work, but are seldom where the action is. As a result, these tasks often fall to the junior officers straight out of the academy or those who are not suitable for more responsibility. We are introduced to such a cast throughout the trailer, which paints it as a very light-hearted romp. What's going to be a big factor though is the comedy. Obvious to say, but if you don't find this sort of fast-paced, banter-heavy humour that funny, then I doubt this series will interest you, like, at all. I don't mind the art style, however. I am a fan of Mike McMahon's prior work, Rick and Morty, but I would never describe myself as a Rick and Morty fan, because of Rick and Morty fans. They ruined that for me. But I did enjoy the humour of that show, and I can see echoes of it here, but I doubt it's going to get as dark as that show does. The ship itself looks fine, as in it's nothing special. It lacks the majestic, clean lines of the Sovereign or the sheer presence of the Galaxy class. It doesn't look as fast as the Intrepid, or have the warlike stoutness of the Defiant. It just looks fine. I describe it as a kitbash kind of vessel, akin to the Freedom class, mixed with a bit of Miranda, which makes it look like it's just a background workhorse of a ship. That fits what this show is going for quite well, as their primary mission is Second Contacts. Basically, they're the ship that shows up after the grand diplomatic encounter, or tense space standoff, with the new species, to actually install the infrastructure needed to create a dialogue with them. They get to go out and meet new species and cultures, but they're never going where no one has gone before. I like the premise. It's the sort of background detail you expect probably goes on after the Enterprise D warps off at the end of an episode, but we never see because all the initial exciting stuff has been done. But now there's a new species out there on the galactic scene, the Federation's going to want to talk to them. And from what I can tell, this isn't even the sort of dedicated science ship that would spend ages assigned to a system and get really involved. The Cerritos is merely following in the footsteps of the frontier vessels, but still skedaddles before the real work begins. So this is my big concern, and the thing that has had me vexed for some time now. Lower Decks, simply by being an animated comedy, where does it fit in the overall canon of the shows? I'm probably not supposed to ask that question, but I don't mean timeline or uniform style. Although, I mean more of The show is quite tonally different from other Star Trek shows, by its very nature as a comedy more than its animated premise. In order to have this comedic tone, we have to exist in an environment where hijinks and shenanigans can ensue on a near-daily basis, something that is rather foreign to the Trek universe. I'm not saying that Trek doesn't do fun, even Discovery tries to have fun occasionally, but for a comedy the flavour of the universe has to change to fit. So am I supposed to accept the events we're seeing are 100% canon depictions of life aboard the USS Cerritos, and that there really was this hapless crew out there at the same time as the Federation was rebuilding from the Dominion War? Or is this more of a memory beta scenario where we just are supposed to know there was a USS Cerritos and a Captain Freeman, but for the most part these are just exaggerated events for comedic retelling, as it were? Again, probably putting too much thought into this, but I'm also probably not alone, and overanalyzing fictional universes is kind of my thing. To be clear, I'm completely fine with this show existing. I'm hoping for a similar sort of feel from this as I get from The Orville, which is both a loving homage and the occasional piss take on the genre. For the most part, that's what I get from this trailer too. Especially with the jokes like how a spear wound would not kill them, as they live on a spaceship. I mean, pointy objects still be pointy and you're not on the spaceship now. I really enjoyed Ensign Boimler recording his fake captain's log and the gag at the end with the phaser, because I can imagine these sorts of things happening. So I'm not going to let my stickler for continuity attitude detract from my enjoyment from the show. I just wouldn't mind some clarity on how I'm supposed to take this to placate that part of my brain. Little things like, is this the official uniform for the 2380s era? I mean, it would fit. Looks like Starfleet is shedding that darker war era look, but the badge is not the one seen in 2385 flashbacks from Picard. So is this merely a quirk of the animation? See what I mean? I can't shut that side of my brain up. But overall, I'm going to approach this show with a soft canon mindset, like I do with most Star Trek novels and games. The events I'm watching are supposed to have happened in Star Trek timeline, but like the retelling of events to your friends at the pub, the comedy factor was probably amped up for fun. And I did have fun with this trailer. Certainly is a strange resurgence for Star Trek we're seeing, isn't it? Anyway, thank you for watching me grapple with my thoughts on Lower Decks, but honestly I'm looking forwards to it, providing it's what it appears to be. Now, how and when can I watch this in the UK? Well, I guess I'll find a way then. With NordVPN. I'm kidding, I'm not sponsored. Seriously though, I don't want to touch CBS All Access. Thanks again. I've been Flag Officer, Super First Grade, Grand Rear Admiral Rickus von Rorikstead, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.